vowed that Labour would offer a radically different approach to politics. So what has he actually achieved? In 10 weeks, he's managed to preside over what I think is the most chaotic government. He has broken Parliament's designated time period. Can you believe to give him tens of thousands of pounds to spend on sauces, whilst his wife given $5,000 for clothes and personal shopping? And the price of that, ladies and gentlemen, a pass to Downing Street, access all areas for Lord Ali. Shame on you. Well, don't worry, Looney Lammy, he's in charge. Looney Lammy, apparently he is the Foreign Secretary. My jaw dropped open when I heard him say, climate change is a bigger threat to the United Kingdom or dictators. Try telling that to Ukraine or Israel. This country desperately needs a strong opposition, and that is where Reform UK comes in. We cannot stand by watching this managed decline once great. We must make Britain great again. Well, our next speaker, another of the famous P with me in Brussels. A very successful businessman in his own right. He was also the chairman of Southampton Football Club. But more for me, though, he ran, I have to say, the most incredible general election campaign in Great Yarmouth. He is passionate, he's articulate, and he deeply cares for the Anglican community that he represents. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Rupert Lowe MP.
Conference. What a pleasure it is to be here today, surrounded by so many like-minded people, concerned with the state of our nation, with a refreshing paucity of evidence. Since our last gathering in Doncaster, we have won 4.1 million votes at a general election. Secured 5M to first past the post. And now we have over 85,000 members. It is always better than to arrive, but I would call it progress. On a personal note, I'd really like to thank all of you for making the effort to come today. I know how much of a sacrifice in both time terms and money terms, but you have no idea the confidence it gives us on the front line to see the People's Army on the march. It is said, says 1,000 words. Here it is. A fat, bloated state freeloaded off a thin, emaciated taxpayer. Next time you encounter some Orwellian virtue-signalling doublespeak from national government, remember this picture and reflect that you elect them and your taxes pay for them. Be the servant and who should be the master. The failures of statism after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Collectivism undermines individual responsibility and fosters a culture of rule by committee. A committee adopts the intellect of the member with the lowest IQ, encourages manipulation, and makes bad decisions. Recent examples in the UK include the post office scandal, the infected blood scandal, the COVID entirety, including forcing an experimental jab on millions of people. Test and trace, EU membership, and thing that the government touches. They foster a dependency culture and lose sight of the fact that governing means serving the electorate who empower them. Alexander Solzhenitsyn said, "Human beings are born with different capabilities. If they are free, they are not equal. And if they are equal, they are not free." Being free is the key to human success and sustainable relationships. Freedom of speech in Parliament and the is central to our unwritten constitution through the Constitution and the Declaration of Rights in 1688. It is the foundation of the relationship between the people, the electorate, the elected assembly, Parliament, and the monarchy. Parliament is assembly wielding sovereign power with the monarch as the titular head and the Lords providing continuity and guidance. As well until 1997, when Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, Pete and Alistair Campbell conspired to undermine the Constitution through malignant legislation, empowering unaccountable, unelected quangos, regulators, and the EU at the expense of parliamentary power. The Equality Act of 2010, for which there was no need, has given legal force and backing to minorities to impose on the majority. This has fostered the rise of the rule of lawyers, not the rule of law, unnecessary division in the country, and suppressed free speech across society. Terms like hate speech and Islamophobia have effectively obstructed dissent, any dissent. Doubt and been encouraged, resulting in young people submitting to, rather than citing mental health issues. Parents have been minimized, and the Cass review is sadly too little. The Financial Services and Markets Act of 2000 gave regulatory power to the Financial Authority and the Prudential Regulation Authority. Have severely damaged our capital markets, own wall philosophy into regulation. It is that after the recent Labour landslip election victory, Rachel Reeves will not be able to manage the British economy without another quango, Office for Budget Responsibility, signing off on her proposed business plan. Their track record of forecasting is lamentable, and they will no doubt be blamed for the inevitable failure of a statist Labour approach to economics. In 1997, Britain was in good shape, largely due to the Thatcher legacy. We knew who we were, We were still one country. We had sidestepped the euro thanks to Sir James Goldsmith's referendum party. Our public finances were in excellent shape, one of the lowest in Europe, and public spending accounted for only 32% of each output. Most importantly, the population was stable and immigration was under control. Today, national debt has exploded 500% to £2,770 billion. Public spending accounts for 46% of output. The private sector is being crowded by the state. Mass legal and illegal control, and over 9 million people of working age do not work. Markets will soon exact their price for the folly of the last century as a result of the failure of the two, Labour and the Tories, jointly responsible with the civil service for undermining our constitution, deceiving the electorate, and feathering dishonest nests. Reform is now the last hope for a return to some form of normality. The majority will prevail over minorities, and 17.4 million people who voted for Brexit must be rewarded with delivery of the independent nation state for which they presciently opted, against all the odds. Damaging legislation must be repealed, the size of the state drastically reduced, and total power must be returned to Parliament, who are accountable only to the electorate. We have been living through a period of madness akin to the South Sea Bubble, the Mississippi Scheme, and tulip mania, when men think in herds, go mad in herds, and only recover their senses slowly, one by one. Reform has now established the beachhead in Parliament, which Nigel identified as our primary aim. We need to restructure into a proper political party, fight and win local elections at both county and borough level, and carefully select our team of candidates to win the next general election. First past the post has its issues, but our 5 MPs have proved that we can win in that system. And when the dam bursts, it will do so spectacularly. We have a plan to help support our candidates and guide them through the experience we have gained over various electoral forays. They say experience costs money, and I have certainly found that to be true. Our country, our history, our freedoms, and our independent sovereignty are impossible to value. It is of not just can we win, we must win. Then, and only then, can we deliver the changes that this country so desperately needs. Let's end two-tier policing. Ensuring that the law is applied fairly and equally to all. Let's back small businesses. Raise the VAT threshold. Scrap IR35. and slash corporation tax. We must reward risk-taking entrepreneurs who build businesses, employ people, create wealth, and above all, pay taxes. Maggie used to say, "I am with the workers, not the shirkers." Well, let me tell you, I am with the workers too. Scrap every diversity-related role. In a vastly reduced public sector and judge people on merit. Singapore propagated a small, highly paid, effective state based on merit alone, and now enjoy GDP per capita twice as high as that of the UK. Let's repeal the Human Rights Act of 1997. And leave the ECHR. Thereby stopping the influence of foreign judges on British law. Let's investigate and repeal divisive legislation such as the Equality Act 2010 and legislation that has bloated the state with quangos such as FUSMA 2000. Let's stop the boats, ending the madness of thousands of unchecked allowing thousands of unchecked foreign young men into the country illegally. Let's responsibly defund the monopolistic, malign BBC. Making it a subscription service and let the people decide its fate. Let's scrap 20-mile-an-hour limits. Low traffic neighborhoods. End the war on motorists and allow free enterprise to flourish. Let's reverse devolution and restore our Act of Union. Scotland is now a dysfunctional example of failed devolution, funded by the English taxpayer through the Barnett formula, with Wales close behind. Less government must be better for all citizens. And finally, let's slash legal immigration. To put it simply, we are full. Only the best and the brightest who will contribute to our economy and, importantly, integrate into our society should be allowed in small numbers. Uncontrolled mass immigration is the root cause of so many of our issues, yet the political establishment refuses to acknowledge it. Either they're incompetent or they're lying. Fearing the failure of their misguided policy of a utopian multicultural society. As Margaret Thatcher said, after 9/11, the events of September the 11th are a terrible reminder that freedom demands eternal vigilance. And for too long, we have not been vigilant. We have harbored those who hate us, tolerated those who threatened us, and indulged those who weakened us. Did anybody listen? When I asked Keir Starmer at PMQs, did he agree that allowing millions of immigrants into the country since 1997 had damaged our communities and undermined our public services, his lame response was that he was unsure of my numbers. What was he questioning? Whether millions of people had entered the country since 1997? That is an undeniable fact, and it is of great concern that he does not seem to understand the electorate's legitimate and growing concerns. Sadly, his instincts as a human rights lawyer, from which he has earned his living, is embedded in his DNA. The current formula simply isn't working, and change is now essential. Challenging the over-complex legal system is hard for a law-abiding nation. But the silent majority now needs the courage to call out the dysfunctional state of Britain before it's too late. As Tacitus said, the more corrupt the state, the more numerous the laws. Our collective objective has to be a reform government between now and 2029, which represents the interests of the British people. As Winston Churchill said, the farther back you can look, the farther forward you are likely to see. In looking back, I came across the view of Socrates on democracy and its vulnerability. He said, democracy must fall because it will try to tailor to everyone. The poor will want the wealth of the rich, and democracy will give it to them. Young people will want to be respected as elderly, and democracy will give it to them. Women will want to be like men, and democracy will give it to them. Foreigners will want the rights of the natives, and democracy will give it to them. Thieves and fraudsters will want important government functions, and democracy will give it to them. And at that time, when thieves and fraudsters finally democratically take authority, because criminals and evildoers want power, there will be worse dictatorship than in the time of any monarchy or oligarchy. Now is the time for the people of Britain to have the courage to speak out before they lose their freedom of speech, and their special way of life to whatever subversive forces are seeking to undermine us, be it the European Union, the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, the billionaires, the World Health Organization, the Bilderbergers, the Council on Foreign Relations, crony capitalism, Tony Blair's socialist dream, or other malign forces. Reform represents the people, fairness, common sense, and an accountable government in Westminster for the British people. That cannot happen without seismic change. Please remember that the only thing for the triumph of evil is good for good men to do nothing. We must now collectively, but legally, bring the fight to them. Thank you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, just a quick note about tomorrow, the second day of our conference. Tomorrow, if I could just have your attention, ladies and gentlemen, Nigel will round off tomorrow's conference at 1:30 with a keynote speech. That's 1:30 tomorrow. That is something you do not want to miss. So Nigel Farage rounding off day 2 of our conference. That is at 1:30 tomorrow. Whilst I'm on that note, your lanyards, please make sure you keep them. If you do not have them tomorrow, you will not be allowed access into the venue because security, as you know, is very tight indeed. Well, let's move on now, shall we, to our next speaker, the third of 5. He's been the Member of Parliament for Ashfield since 2019. Now, he was originally elected as a member of the Conservative Party. Yes. But he defected to Reform UK in March of this year and became our party's first MP. He was subsequently re-elected for Reform UK at the last general election. Ashfield born and bred, he originally started life as a coal miner. Now, his views have stayed stable as the world of uni-party politics have shifted around him. Now, for years, he was the most sought-after ticket on what they call the Tory rubber chicken circuit. That is the nickname given to the endless parade of dinners that political candidates must attend during a campaign to meet donors, also to raise money. But he finally saw the light. He had the courage to come over to Reform UK. Courage which many of his former colleagues in the Tory party now wish they had had. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome Lee Anderson, MP.
Wow, that were brilliant, that were. Welcome, conference. It is indeed a pleasure to stand here before the People's Army. And I want to thank each and every one of you for making the sacrifice to come in here for the weekend. I know times are tough. I know money's in short supply. I know many of you have had to have a day off work, hotels, travel, childcare. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for coming today. I want my country back. The question is, do you want your country back? Amen for that. You know, I remember a time when our children went to school and they were taught how to read and write and become good citizens. They were not taught they could be a different gender. They did not have to sit down and listen to a 6'5" drag queen read stories to them. This has been happening under our watch in this country. It's an absolute disgrace. I want this nonsense to stop. Yeah. Let children be children. Let them grow and develop and learn and make their own mistakes. They'll figure it out when they get to 18. Just because a little boy picks up a doll, it doesn't make him a girl. True. And just because a little girl kicks a football, it doesn't mean she wants to be a boy. I want my country back, and the country I'm talking about would not tolerate this nonsense. Over the past few years, nearly 150,000 illegal migrants have crossed the English Channel, and they've been picked up by British boats and then placed in 4-star hotels, given free legal advice, and then allowed to settle in our country. It's a disgrace. "90% of these arrivals are young men, some destined for a life of crime. We've seen it before. They've come into this country and committed all sorts of horrific crimes. And our governments have passed 3 acts of Parliament to stop the boats, and they still keep coming. These men have broken into our country. And guess what, conference? I do not want them here. Come on. I want my country back, and the country I'm talking about would not tolerate this stupidity. You know what? Back in the 80s and 90s, in Ashfield, where I represent, the capital of common sense, it's true, it's true, I live there. If you applied for a council house back in the 80s and 90s, the council would give you 3 sets of keys and say, go and look at 3 houses and pick the one you want. Nowadays, 7,000 people on the council house waiting list in Ashfield. You've got literally no chance at all of ever getting a council house. And yet, Parliament thinks it's a good idea to let over 1 million people a year enter our country. That's hundreds of thousands of extra people putting extra pressure on our public services, whilst decent, hard-working Brits can't get a dental appointment, a GP appointment, a school place for their kids. And these idiot politicians tell us that mass migration is a great thing and makes us all better off. Idiots, a lot of them. I want my country back, and the country I'm talking about would not tolerate this stupidity. Now then, this gets better. Believe me. Back in the day, if we had civil unrest on our streets, you could be rest assured that our boys in blue would quickly be on the scene and get stuck in, so decent folks could go about their daily life. Just imagine telling people in 1984 on the picket lines, on the miners' picket lines, I was there with my dad and my family. Just imagine telling the police and the striking minds at that time that fast forward 40 years, and we'd see a load of undernourished, vegans, grey-haired, armed with a Just Stop Oil high-vis vest and a dangerous pair of Jesus sandals. Entering London and bringing the whole capital city to a standstill, whilst the Metropolitan Police stood by and did nothing apart from dance the Macarena. And admire the latest rainbow on their police car. It's true. I want my country back, and the country I'm talking about would not tolerate this stupidity. No, it's true. What about net zero? What a load of rubbish that is. Yeah. Let me tell you, these lunatics that keep banging on about net zero, let me tell you about Drax Power Station in Yorkshire, North Yorkshire. This is a power station that used to burn coal from a nearby coal mine. Now, what does it burn now? It burns wood. Genius. This wood, by the way, comes from America. We are literally chopping down forests and trees and putting them on diesel-guzzling cargo ships, sailing them across the Atlantic, setting fire to them in Drax Power Station. And that's classed as renewable energy. Not only that we subsidise this power station by £1 million a day. It's cost us £11 billion so far, whilst we've got shale gas, oil under our feet. It's nonsense. In March this year, I think it was March, might have been April, March this year, I became the Reform UK's first ever Member of Parliament. Yeah, that's it. You will also know that this was just after a few supposedly controversial comments I made about Mayor Khan. I like to think of it as constructive criticism. In my opinion, he has given our capital city away and he should be thoroughly ashamed of himself. Yeah. I was told at the time that I must apologise to Labour's mayor in London. Yeah. Oh, let me tell you now, conference, I will never apologise to that man. Let's look at his track record. Overall crime up by 21%, violent crime 35%, homicides 5%, knife crime 54%, sexual offences 51%. It should be him who's apologising to the people of London. A disgrace, you're right. He's got the cheek to tell us that he doesn't feel safe in London. Yeah, let that sink in. He's got bodyguards, armoured car, 24-hour security. He's in charge of the Met Police, and he doesn't feel safe. How does he think the 10 million people that live in London feel under his leadership? This man needs booting out of office for the sake of London. In July of this year, I became the Reform UK's first ever elected Member of Parliament. Yeah, you can clap for that as well. And let me tell you, that's a much better feeling being re-elected than the first time round, because I had a massive point to prove, as you know. Yeah. But, conference, the greatest achievement during my political career was in 2022, I was voted the worst man in Britain by the Daily Mirror. Yeah. Now, that's a feat even Nigel Farage cannot surpass. There's no chance. But I'm telling you what, it was a close-run race that year, because in second place, hot on my heels, was Prince Andrew. Even I find it funny, and I've read it about 20 times. So. Yeah, the Daily Mirror criticised me for my stance on the England side taking the knee. Nobody should be taking the knee to Black Lives Matter. They also criticised me over some supposedly controversial things that I've said. Listen, it's not controversial to call out BLM. It's not controversial to be concerned about what our children are being taught in schools. It's not controversial to be concerned about mass immigration. It's not controversial to be concerned about rising crime in our country, and it's not controversial to defend our history, our heritage and our culture. Let me tell you this, friends, our great country is a gift to the world. Look, it really is. Look at the gifts we've given to the world: the Industrial Revolution, steam engines, mining, mills, shipbuilding. Did you know that the UK has invented 51% of all the inventions in the world over the past 1,000 years? Incredible. We are the greatest country in the world when it comes to inventions, yet we cannot invent anything to stop the small boats. Look at the sports that we've given to the world: football, cricket, rugby, golf, tennis, hockey, badminton, squash, table tennis, boxing, snooker. The list goes on and on. Look at culture: D.H. Lawrence, Wordsworth, Keats, Byron, Shakespeare, Dickens, Tolkien, Orwell, Jane Austen, Ian Fleming, C.S. Lewis, George Eliot, and the greatest cultural hero of our time, Jim Davidson. Where is he? Where are you, Jim? Where is he? Told you. He didn't know about that. Just look how great we are as a nation. Yet Parliament seems determined to give all that away and apologise for our past. Now, my message is simple. We are a great country. And if you do not like our history, our heritage, our culture, then clear off. Yeah? Is that plain speaking enough for you? Is that, yeah? Yeah. Okay, a bit more. Let's be honest, friends. We have made mistakes in the past. And when we make mistakes, we must apologise. And we've been responsible for some awful things. Things like the BBC. You know, just a few weeks back, they sent me a reminder for my TV licence, and some of you may have seen that I ripped it up online, and hey, yeah. Listen. Guess what? They've sent me another. Now, what do you think we should do with this? Huh? Friends, we have a real battle on our hands to save our great country. You know this. But it's you, the People's Army, that is our last defence, because Parliament's given up on us. We've got 5 MPs now, and I'm proud to be one of them. And our membership is growing every single day. Next year, we're going to win hundreds of seats, council seats across the country. That's a fact. But we must take this fight to Parliament so we can take back control of our country and win the 2029 general election and put Nigel in number 10. Friends, we can do this, but we can only do it if we stand strong. The establishment absolutely hate us. They want us gone, but we're going nowhere. They will not allow us on the select committees as they do not like scrutiny. And they do not want us on GB News either. They are trying to cancel us. But we have 4.1 million people in the People's Army, and it's growing every single day. Listen, the mainstream parties are scared of us, and so they should be, because we're coming for them at every single ballot box in the country. Friends, stay strong, keep the faith, spread the word, and together we will get our country back. Thank you.
Well, now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to introduce a man I have spent far too much time with. He's a friend, he's a colleague, he's a confidant. And without this man, this party quite simply would not be here. He single-handedly kept this party afloat when times were tough. In fact, I still blame him entirely for the reason I'm on this stage. It is my great honour to introduce someone who is often described as one of the bad boys of Brexit. I like to think of him as the Nigel Havers of the right wing. He is the thinking woman's crumpet. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice MP.
Wow! What a party! What fun! Hello, fellow reformers! It's fantastic to see so many of you here. Many of you will have been here on the 30th of June, during the general election campaign. They said it couldn't be done. They said we might get one. We got 5. Thanks to you and 4.1 million other people across our great United Kingdom. And firstly, I just want to reiterate the thanks to all of you being here. It's incredible. The time, the money, the commitment that you give. And we've achieved, and we are achieving, something absolutely extraordinary. In my own constituency that no one forecast could be won, I overturned the biggest ever Conservative majority of 25,500 people. And that was with your help, with the constituents' help, but also in particular the help of my brilliant team who are here today, led by the amazing Ryan and Co. Please give them a round of applause. Now, it's quite a moment. It's quite a moment arriving in the House of Commons, being led by, some might call him our chief whip, but the truth is, the great Lee Anderson, wasn't he good earlier? My word, wow! Our Lee, he's a brilliant tour guide, absolutely brilliant. The House of Parliament, big place. He said, don't worry, lads, there's only 3 important places. The chamber, the bar, and the smoking terrace. Now, importantly, I'm not going to tell you in which order he thought was most priority. But I have to tell you, it is quite a moment as you go into the chamber, which is much smaller than anybody can believe. And the last thing you see as you go into the chamber is that statue looking down at you, wishing you luck, and wishing you belief in our great nation. Yes, the statue of Sir Winston Churchill. It sends a shiver up my spine every time I go past. And we've had some fun in the chamber. I've spoken about 16 times, and we've been holding this government to account, and there's all sorts of procedures. You have to bob up and down like a yo-yo. God, I sat there for 4.5 hours, bobbing up and down, and Lee tells us what to do, the brilliant Lee. And let me tell you, we talk about thanks. But when Lee Anderson had the courage, the conviction, the passion, and the belief to make that huge leap, when he looked me in the eye back in February, he shook my hand and he said, "Richard, let's do it." We did it, and that was the moment. Absolutely vital. Now, this conference, putting this on, doesn't just happen. And talking of thanks, the next speaker, our new chairman, is doing a brilliant job. Without Zia Youssef, this would not have happened without his incredible team. Zia, many, many thanks. Incredible. And of course, when the great man speaks shortly, my thanks to Nigel for saying, yes, I'm going to do it, we're going to go for it, and we're going to save Britain. And that is huge. Now, here we are. Do you remember back in January, I came across this funny word, Starmageddon. Even the Daily Mail's now latched onto it. The issue is, I didn't realise after 11 weeks of Labour government, we'd be talking about Starmageddon on steroids. Now, I must declare an interest here. It's important to declare this interest. I have paid for my own suit. Who knew? I don't know, what do I call him? Do I call him Sponger Starmer? Do I call him Scrounger Starmer? Do I call him Free Gear Kia? Or do I call him Starmer the Granny Harmer? Unbelievable what he's already doing to our country. Truly unbelievable. As it is, unbelievable. I mean, 22,000 pensioners in my constituency of Boston and Skegness, you can see on the screens behind. 22,000 pensioners have had their winter fuel allowance taken away from them. Elizabeth shook my hand and burst into tears of fear. It is an absolute disgrace what this Labour government is doing to our pensioners and to our country. It's also an absolute disgrace what the establishment have done to our country over the last 10 years. They've come across they've imposed on us, the British people, 3 cults. The first one was the cult of mass immigration. They told us it was a brilliant idea, it would be good for us. Really? How's it going, folks? 8 million later, do we feel better off? Do we feel that our public services are working better? And I tell you what, last week was a really important week in our country. Last week, all of these 3 cults were exposed for the fraud, the con, and the lie that they are. Last week alone, the Office for Budget Responsibility, that great institution that Rachel Thieves loves, the Office for Budget Responsibility admitted that actually low-skilled migrants never contribute to our country more than they take out. But we've been told the opposite for decades. The great lie exposed of mass immigration being a benefit to the United Kingdom. The second cult, this sort of new religion that we had to bow down to, and if you don't, you're a dreadful person. If you don't bow down to these religions, if you want to express concern about immigration, no, you're a bigot, and we'll cancel you. Well, if you don't bow down to the cult of the NHS, then you're a bad person. We're going to cancel you. Apparently, you want to privatise it. No, we don't. We just want a healthcare system that works in our country. Thank you very much. Even a lovely lady here earlier came up to me and said, I'm a retired nurse. And she said, you're so right when you spoke to Wes Streeting in the House of Commons last week. after this Lord Darzi report exposed again the great lie that the NHS is the envy of the world. Tragically, it's not. The truth is the outcomes and the performance and the waiting lists are amongst the worst in the world. The great lie was exposed last week. The good news is Wes Streeting, the health secretary, he agreed with me in the House of Commons when I said the NHS needs reform. The truth is the country needs reform. Now, so that's the second cult that has been exposed last week. But the third cult that I want to focus on is the cult, this new religion of net zero. Oh, God. I mean, honestly. But it was all exposed last week, wasn't it? And then there's my new best friend. I'm only joking. Ed Mad Miliband. He is, in this extreme cult of net zero, he is the chief zealot. He really is. He's absolutely obsessed. In the chamber, he's like a man possessed. I actually had to leave the chamber. My blood was boiling. It's unbelievable. He wants to cover all our farmland. My constituency of fertile land. He wants to cover it with solar panels. He doesn't care about blighting the countryside with hundreds and thousands of huge 50-meter pylons, including across my constituency. This man is a danger to our economy. He's the most dangerous man in Britain to our economy today. Last week we had thousands of jobs sacrificed on the altar of net zero in Port Talbot. The business secretary had to admit that he agreed with me. We have a problem with our energy prices, our electricity prices. Yes, we absolutely do, because of the madness of net zero. That's the reason that those jobs are being destroyed. That's the reason that 400 plus jobs have gone in the Grangemouth refinery that's being closed, announced also last week. Absolute insanity. There's thousands more jobs going to go, sadly, in Scunthorpe. And then we had the other news. Yes, they're not going to proceed with the coal mine in the northwest. Hundreds more jobs lost. And there's a reason we're going up in the polls in the wonderful nation of Scotland, and that's because the oil and gas industry is terrified about the destruction of those jobs there. As you can tell, I've got to be honest, I'm pretty wound up about this. It may have come across. So, quite right, sir. Are you wound up about this? Yes! Excellent. We're all on track. They are. It's unbelievable what's going on. And when you travel to other nations who have been lucky enough to enjoy, like we do, oil and gas energy treasure, do you know what they're doing? They're all extracting oil and gas as fast as they can. In the Middle East, nations like the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, in the US, in Asia. And let me tell you, when you read their newspapers and you watch their TV, there are two words they don't talk about. Their eyes on the phone. They never mention the words net zero. Do you know what they're doing? They're laughing at our naive stupidity. Absolutely laughing as they steal our jobs and our money. They cannot believe the negligence of our establishment. We've got all this energy treasure under our feet. Lee mentioned it. Oil, gas, shale gas. And yet, brilliant. Hundreds of billions of pounds worth owned by all of us. And yet, no, I tell you what, folks, this is a really good financial idea. Let's leave it there. For God's sake. I mean, honestly, it's utter madness. It's negligent, it's outrageous, and I tell you what, here's a good reason to win the next general election. And under Nigel and Zia's leadership, I believe, I know, and with your help, I know that we will. The first thing we should do when we win the next general election, folks, is to scrap net zero. And I tell you what, I'm putting all of those people on notice, every single one of you, all of you, who are receiving subsidies from us, the taxpayer, for all these net zero projects. The moment we scrap net zero, all of these subsidies, they stop. End of, terminato, finito. So, hello, that's the establishment cutting me off. They don't like what I'm saying. That's what's going on. Extraordinary. We have to do this. We have to win. You heard wonderful words from Ant Middleton just before lunch, talking about our great country, the foundation based on Christianity, the fact that, sure, we can welcome smart immigration, but all those who come here, who want to enjoy the benefits of this great nation, you do so by playing by our rules, our game, including, and we have that sense of fair play. When people say, what do you mean by the British culture, the British sense of value? I always go back to that sense of cricket, that sense of fair play. And Lee talked about the great sports that we invented, like so many other things. I could go on, but time is pressing. Zia's waiting, Nigel's waiting. But let's just finish with a message of optimism, of hope. I believe we can save this great country. Do you? Yeah. Are you sure? Yeah. Can we win the next general election? Yeah. Then let's do it. Thank you very much.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, I mentioned earlier that Reform UK was a start-up built from the ground up and built in record speed thanks to the hard work and dedication of so many of you and so many volunteers generally. But now our new chairman, Zia Youssef, is professionalising the party at a speed never seen before in British politics. Under his tenure, the growth of this party has been exponential. Now, as you've heard already, we're not just targeting council seats, but also the Welsh and the Scottish parliaments in 2026. And the polls look really good. The polls have already shown we're on track to win anything up to 20+ seats in Wales and anything up to 10 seats in Scotland. Our new chairman, well, he's a bit of a legend, a very successful businessman, born in Scotland to Sri Lankan parents, gained a scholarship to school, founded his own business, grew it to become one of the fastest growing companies in Europe, and very wisely, he sold it. Now, he first became engaged with this party before the election, and he has quite a job on his hands. He's been charged with making this party an election-winning force. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our chairman, Zia Youssef.
Hello, Reform UK! Are you fired up? Good! You should be fired up, because Reform UK is on a roll. We have the wind in our sails. We are now polling at 18%. up from 14% at the general election just a couple of months ago. We've opened hundreds of Reform UK branches across the country. Our membership has surged to 80,000 people as patriots like you, ladies and gentlemen, join our movement. We have all the momentum in British politics, and we are just getting started. But we meet, ladies and gentlemen, at a time of great peril for our country. Working people in Britain feel betrayed, demoralized. They see the nation and the culture that we love being robbed from underneath us. Many of them fear walking to the local store lest they fall victim to the knife crime epidemic the Westminster elite are too cowardly to curtail. And should they raise concerns about any of this, they're insulted and they're smeared. But as awful as Labour are, they're no more than the Tories on Fast Forward. Both parties leave our border open, explode the size of the population, raise taxes, drive fuel bills up, release violent criminals from jail early, and put foreign citizens above their own. And there are real consequences to this. A third of young adults in this country cannot even afford to rent a home, let alone buy one. Their future is being robbed from them. Our health service is buckling under pressure. The Tories promised in manifesto after manifesto to bring net migration down to tens of thousands. Each time they exploded migration numbers to record highs, they left office with that number at 750,000 per year. The Tories told us what we wanted to hear, and then they betrayed every value their voters elected them to uphold. Now, new Tory leadership hopefuls are doing the rounds promising to tackle migration. This despite all of them being in the government that presided over the greatest betrayal of the British people in history. Shameless does not begin to describe it. As a result, ladies and gentlemen, the country we love is spiraling downward. Spiraling like a spluttering aircraft with multiple engines on fire. Spiraling as a result of successive Tory and now Labour regimes. But there remains time to put those fires out, to refuel midair. There remains time to soar to new heights. Doing so will take bold, decisive action. And only we can do this. Only Reform UK can do this. The party structures that underpin the Tories and Labour are too corrupted, too infiltrated. They're designed to churn out leaders who offer more of the same. Ladies and gentlemen, 14 years of catastrophic Tory mismanagement and this new Labour government have brought our country to its knees. They want us to give up. They want us to lose hope. But while this great country may be on its knees, patriots across the land are standing up. Patriots like you, the amazing men and women in this room, are standing up and saying, no, we are not having it. We are building a movement in this country, the likes of which has never before been seen. We are organizing, mobilizing, galvanizing. We are going to build a grassroots election-winning machine. If we do that, and if you do that with us, then, ladies and gentlemen, we will win the next general election. And as we embark on the next chapter of this extraordinary voyage together, let us remind ourselves why we are all here, why we must succeed on our mission. British values that undergird our very civilization have come under all-out assault. It is down to us, it is down to you, to protect and celebrate the miracle of British values. These are the values of equality before the law, the presumption of innocence, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. These are the values that have been exported across the globe. They've given rise to the United States, to Canada, to Australia. British values are the foundation on which human ideas come to flourish. It is no exaggeration that our world would look very different were it not for our great island. You know, prior to 1928, hospitals were full of people who would die of blood poisoning from a simple cut or scratch. Doctors powerless to help. That wasn't until in September 1928, when a professor of bacteriology at St. Mary's Hospital in London returned from holiday. He set about sorting through some Petri dishes when something caught his eye. That professor was called Alexander Fleming. His discovery of penicillin changed the course of history and saved over 100 million lives. The world owes a debt of gratitude to Britain. We have blazed a trail for the world, not just in science, but in the arts and in literature. We gave the world William Shakespeare and Jane Austen, George Orwell and J.K. Rowling. Charles Dickens and Ricky Gervais. British values are the ultimate gift to us. Gifts from those who conceived of them, and then the millions who laid down their lives to protect them for us. Let us not forget the sacrifices made for us to preserve this gift. Sacrifices made by men like John Greyburn. Lieutenant Greyburn was born in India and raised in Dorset. He attended Sherborne School, and then he worked for the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank before joining the war effort in 1940. He became an officer in the Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire Light Infantry and later transferred to the newly formed Parachute Regiment. On the 17th of September 1944, as platoon commander, he led the first airborne drop into Arnhem during Operation Market Garden. Greyburn's platoon seized the Arnhem Bridge and held it under relentless enemy fire for over 3 days. Almost immediately, he was met by fierce fire from machine guns and was shot through the shoulder. Despite this, he pressed forward with extraordinary bravery. Despite having no cover, Lieutenant Greyburn continued to lead his men until the casualties became so overwhelming he was ordered to withdraw. Refusing to abandon his post, he personally directed the retreat. He insisted on being the last to leave the bridge. The enemy, recognizing his astonishing determination, resorted to extreme measures, using tanks and demolition charges. Finally, an enemy tank approached at such proximity to his position that it became impossible to hold. He was defenseless. Undeterred, Lieutenant Greyburn stood up in point-blank range of the tank and personally directed the withdrawal of his men to the main defensive line to which he had been ordered. 80 years ago to this very day, Lieutenant Greyburn was killed in action, and he was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross. Without his inspiring leadership and personal gallantry, the Arnhem Bridge could never have been held for so long. Stories like this remind us just how much is at stake, how grateful we must all be to those who made the ultimate sacrifice to ensure we enjoy the freedoms that so many now take for granted. Which is why we need patriots like you and across the country to work hard with us to save our nation. We cannot do this without your help. Time, however, is short. Our mission, urgent. The 14% of the vote share we won in July was achieved with virtually no ground campaign. By the time of the next general election, we will build the best ground campaign in the country. The enthusiasm and energy that reform has is already unsurpassed. What we need are systems and infrastructure to harness it. I've now been chairman of reform for 2 months. In that time, we've seen our membership surge to 80,000. We've launched hundreds of reform local constituency branches and prepared to stand thousands of candidates in local elections next year. By 2029, Reform UK will be ready to be the party of government, and a Prime Minister Farage will embark on the most ambitious and bold reforms this country has seen in our lifetime. Now, we have been told by an army of skeptics that we cannot do this. We've been told that the rotten two-party system is the only show in town. Those same cynics say we could never escape the vice-like grip of the European Union. Those same cynics said we could never win parliamentary seats. Nigel Farage has already proved those doubters wrong in the way only he can. Those same cynics now say that we could never win the next election and elect him as our Prime Minister. Well, we have news for them. Just as has happened so often before in our proud history, the indomitable spirit of the British people will prevail. Our great country has seen darker times than this, and each time the British people have risen to master that moment. Each time, proud patriots like the ones in this room and across the country have come to Britain's rescue in its time of need. Each time, Britain has emerged rejuvenated and stronger than ever. Inspired by Nigel Farage's example, we will never bow to the mob, never succumb to their intimidation or cower in the face of their threats. For this is a battle for the soul of this nation, and we will not yield. We know in our hearts that this country can be saved. What we can achieve together is limited only by what you believe to be possible. Reform has unparalleled enthusiasm. We must now build the infrastructure to harness it. And we cannot do this without you. So we ask that if you can, please get involved in your local branch, volunteering to help knock on doors, deliver leaflets, and turning out the vote. This will be pivotal in our success. If you do that, we can make huge gains in the council elections next year, perform brilliantly in Scotland and Wales the year after that, and then we will see Nigel Farage at the podium of Downing Street, and we will usher in a new era of hope and prosperity for the United Kingdom. A Prime Minister Farage will secure our borders, freeze migration, defend and celebrate British values, stop the boats, get the knives off our streets, cut energy bills, and put British people first. We will turn this ship around. We will save this country. We will return Britain to being the poised and powerful country we know it can be, and we will leave a Britain for our children of which we can be proud. Thank you very much, Reform UK.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, now it is time for our final speaker. I think it's fair to say he is a true force in British politics. This man I first met when he phoned me and asked to stand in the European elections. Now, he's been variously described by people as diverse as Rod Liddle, the columnist, to Ken Clarke, the former Conservative MP, as the most important politician of a generation and the most successful. There is no doubt this man has changed British history. I'll tell you one more thing. The latest polling now places this man as the most popular leader in the United Kingdom.
It's over 20 years since he first stood in a by-election. He missed out then, but he made it to the European Parliament, where he established his own style.
Would you buy a used car from this commission? I'm asking for 10 seconds. Who are you? I'd never heard of you. Nobody in Europe had ever heard of you. You all laughed at me. Well, I have to say, you're not laughing now, are you? June the 23rd go down in our history as our Independence Day.
There's some breaking news. In the last few moments, Nigel Farage has tweeted this.
He said, I'll be making an emergency general election announcement.
I'm coming back as leader of Reform UK, but not just for this election campaign. I'm coming back for the next 5 years.
A massive result for Nigel Farage, not just a win, but a very clear one.
It's amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Wow. Now just give me a second. Just give me a second. Do you like them? Very expensive. But guess what? I bought them myself. How about that? Wow. I got to tell you, the energy, the optimism, the enthusiasm that we've got in this room is not something that can be replicated by any other political party in this country. And indeed, I wonder whether there's ever been a party conference in this country with this level of energy and fun. Thank you so, so much, all of you, for coming along and supporting us. So it was the middle of May, end of May this year, and my life was going pretty well. I just had a big 60th birthday. I'm in not bad health, which is down to clean living. Great job 4 nights a week at GB News, which I was loving. Just been voted News Presenter of the Year for the 2nd year in a row. And I had not 1, but 2 grandchildren on the way. The first of whom, I'm delighted to say, was born on June the 23rd, Brexit Day. How about that? So I was doing well, making money, no pressure, no stress, no abuse from the press. Life couldn't have been better. And then Rishi Sunak calls a snap general election. And I think to myself, given the short time period, is there anything I can do? And actually, would I want to do it? Would I want to give up a really comfortable, easy life and one that involved weekends off? Would I want to give it up? And would it be possible in such a short time frame? Well, I thought to myself, we've just had 14 years of Conservative government. And the last few years, since Boris won in 2019, has been one of a complete breach of trust with the British public on a truly historic scale. And I felt I was upset about it for the damage it does to democracy, but also upset about it because, don't forget, I stood aside in that 2019 general election because we wanted to get Brexit over the line after all those years of agony and struggle. And I thought, well, we have left, but have we taken back control of our borders? No. Have we given our 5.5 to 6 million men and women running their own businesses? Have we deregulated and made their lives easier and better? No. In fact, at almost every level, we've been betrayed. And then I thought about what was happening on our streets. The rise of knife crime, the rise of gun crime, the fear of people even in the smartest parts of London to go out for a drink or dinner and for a man to wear a watch or a woman to wear jewellery. I thought about what mass uncontrolled immigration on a scale the likes of which we'd never seen had done to divide our communities. I looked at the fact that, frankly, without massive public borrowing, there would have been no growth in our economy for year after year after year. An NHS in which you can't get a GP appointment, roads that are clogged beyond comprehension. And frankly, I thought to myself, Britain is broken. And then I couldn't help it. Well, if Britain is broken, then logically, Britain needs reform. So I was really in a terrible quandary as to what to do, genuinely. And then I went down to Dover for a day. I went and joined Richard up in Skegness, Lee, in his constituency of Ashfield. And I began to have people in the street walking up to me, speaking to me as if almost I was letting them down by not giving up my lovely life. Anyway, in the end, I thought, whatever obstacles, the fact we've only got a few weeks, the fact that 40% of the population don't yet know who reform even is, I thought despite all of that, actually, there are two achievable goals in those 4 weeks and 3 days. The first clear, achievable goal was to get millions of votes, and the second, knowing as I do from bitter experience how difficult the first past the post system is, but I believe that we could establish a beachhead in Parliament by getting a few people elected. And I'm proud to say that in the early hours of the 5th of July, both of those objectives were realised. And that is, and all that is, it's just the first big step on what I now believe, if you're with me, if you support me, if you're prepared to help me, well, then it will become the first big step on what I believe can be a truly astonishing, historic journey that can do something to do our country good, to honour those that have gone before us, and to give our children and grandchildren a better future. It's the first step. Now, we could have done better. We could have done better, but at that stage of the game, and this is absolutely not knocking Richard and what he did to keep this thing alive for all those years, we weren't big enough. Give Richard a round of applause. Go on. We just, at that stage of our development, we weren't big enough, wealthy enough, professional enough to vet general election candidates properly. And we were let down. That amateurism let us down. We could have won a lot more votes, and there are lessons that we need to learn from that. So as I stood after the count in Clacton, in those early hours of July the 5th, I said that yes, of course, I would represent the constituency, the constituents in Parliament, but I had a job, and my job was to professionalise and democratise Reform UK. That was a solemn promise and pledge that I made to you, the members. On professionalisation, we've made some changes. Richard is now my deputy leader, who also sits in Parliament and subs for me as leader when I am not there. And that was a good, solid, sound appointment. I know you all agree. And then somebody of exceptional talent, who I'd met over a decade ago, reappeared during the campaign on the scene. He's a young man in his late 30s, who's done rather well in life, who is really rather patriotic, who just gave a brilliant speech to this conference, and I really think having Zia as our chairman has already made a massive difference to our level of professionalisation. Around them are a small but very professional team. Just look at what they put on in this conference. Isn't it truly incredible? Isn't it beautifully done? And we're recruiting right now to get full-time regional managers and regional organisers. So I feel that my promise to professionalise the party is now on track. I also promise you that in future we will be vetting candidates rigorously at all levels. I promise you that. We haven't got time, we haven't got room for a few extremists to wreck the work of a party that now has 80,000 members and rising by hundreds every single day. Amazing. But it's on the democratisation of the party where perhaps I've been the most criticised, although, having said that, I'm quite used to being criticised for virtually everything. Any major, terrible event that happens in the country is clearly my fault. It's lucky I don't care, isn't it, really? They can write what they like. I don't care, because I know what I believe in. Now, I set this up as a limited company guaranteed by shares, and I owned 60% of the shares. Now, I could make a joke and say that it led to streamlined decision-making, but I did it for two reasons. One, we had no time to get established, and it needed somebody of experience to make decisions, right or wrong, and that structure allowed me to do that. But secondly, I did it because new or nascent political parties are vulnerable to being hijacked by extremist groups and bad actors. And all the while I had control of it, that could never happen. That could never happen. Because we don't want extremists. We don't want bigots. We don't want people who think that way, because we represent the silent, decent majority of this great country that we live in. But the time has come. The infant that Reform UK was has been growing up. We had the teenage tantrums, which were those that caused us harm in the general election. But we're now at a different point. The party is an adult. And this weekend is when Reform UK comes of age. We've come of age, and so I've got to make, and I want to make, the necessary adjustments. There will be before you tomorrow, well, you've had it already on email, there'll be a vote tomorrow morning on a constitution for the party. We changed the structure of the party. No longer will it be a company guaranteed by shares, but a company limited by guarantee. It'll be a non-profit making organisation, and I will not be the shareholder. In fact, do you know who's going to be the shareholder of Reform UK? You, the members, will own this party. You will own this party, not me. And we will have a board to manage the party with significant elected representation from the members. And that board will be there to safeguard how we're operating, to prevent entryism. We wouldn't want a Corbyn-style takeover, would we, of our party as Labour suffered a few years ago. But the real story of this conference and of the plan for the future is not the share structure. It's not the management board. It's this. We have already set up, and we are in process of setting up right now across the country, and bear in mind we've done this in 2 months, 266 constituency associations. That is an incredibly fast move. But we need those branch associations in literally every constituency in the land. I went up in the campaign to Sunderland to do a public event. It was organised at 48 hours' notice, and 1,000 people arrived. It was incredible. And we were there in Sunderland, where they don't generally like people from Newcastle. But we had Sir John Hall, who was there, who's here with us today. Welcome, Sir John. It's lovely to see you. And really good to see you. And John said to me, and he's getting on a bit, but he's done a few things in life, and he's rather bright. He said to me, the problem is these 1,000 people, you remember, they'll all go home and not know anybody else. And it's really what Ant Middleton was talking about this morning. It's about building teams. It's about having unity. And it's through the branches that we get these structures. It's through the branches that we raise money. It is through the branches that we find the necessary candidates to fight elections. It is through the branches that we actually become part of the local community, not just a national political party. And there is a template for this. Now, I never thought I'd say this, but we have to model ourselves on the Liberal Democrats. Now, that doesn't mean that you'll see me cascading down waterfalls. And I won't behave in a way that I think is particularly stupid, even if others think I do. Now, the Liberal Democrats build branches. The Liberal Democrats win seats at district, county, and unitary level. The Liberal Democrats build on that strength. The Liberal Democrats put literature and leaflets through doors repeatedly in their target areas. And despite the fact they haven't got any policies at all, in fact, the whole thing's really rather vacuous, isn't it? But they managed, with a vote much lower than ours, to win 72 seats in Parliament. So not only am I giving you the shares of the party, I'm actually giving you the responsibility for making this a success. Whatever we do, whatever I do, or Richard does, or Zia does, or the rest of the MPs do, whatever our management team do, whatever our social media guys do, that can only take us so far. We will not realise our dream unless the People's Army of supporters are organised, unless the People's Army of supporters are helped to professionalise, unless that People's Armies fight elections not just as a paper name on the ballot, but with the intention of winning as many seats as we can. This party will succeed or fail in its historic mission, according to what you 4,000 good folk are able to do and to impart over the course of the next few years. It's up to you. It really is up to you. Now, I'm used to being on impossible political journeys. I was told, Nigel, you're wasting your time. You're wasting your breath. Britain will never, ever leave the European Union. Well, it might have taken a long time, but you know what? We damn well did it against the entirety of the British establishment. And so, when Zia comes along as chairman and says, well, it's obvious, we're fighting to win the next general election. And people think, that Zia bloke, you know, I mean, he might have been all right in business, but he's lost his marbles. But I don't think there's ever been a time when there is greater disenchantment in the two big parties that have dominated our political life for the last 100 years. Labour have not won through love. So the opportunity is there, and that is why we must take the English county council elections next year, plus areas like Doncaster and areas like Thurrock, where the district councils are up. Our first big test of fire comes on the first Thursday in May next year. We're going to need over 2,000 candidates. We're going to need you organised behind them, helping them. I genuinely believe if we get next May right, we can produce a result that is truly astonishing. We can get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people elected to councils, to be given positions of responsibility, to make us part of the lives of folk living in their communities. The opportunity is enormous. So I ask you, are you going to help us in this historic mission? Thank you. And we'll go on. We'll go on the next year. Scotland, what a remarkable, well done for coming, thank you. Saw a couple of kilts earlier, I thought they must have come from there. The fact we're neck and neck in the polls with the Conservatives in Scotland already, the fact that a small team managed to field candidates who didn't embarrass us in every single one of those Scottish constituencies, there are opportunities there. In Wales, Wales will elect under the D'Hondt proportional representation system. It is it not, David, the most astonishing opportunity? And these are all our building blocks. These are all the big hurdles, I guess, that we have to get over. But if we succeed in 25, we build even bigger in 26, and we keep going, then I promise you, sky is the limit. Sky is the limit. And, you know, have a look at what we're up against. The journalists are obsessed with who is going to be the next Conservative leader. Who is the one I most want? Who is the one I least want? Well, from what I can work out, one of them is campaigning as a Liberal Democrat. One of them thinks that having worked in McDonald's for a week makes them working class. One of them appears to have had a Damascene conversion from being part of the establishment and the established view to suddenly saying things that many of us in this room would agree with, but lacks any discernible personality whatsoever, and would lead a party that is split down the middle anyway. And the last of the four has got the most inappropriate surname I've ever come across in my life, which indicates an IQ rather higher than I actually believe they have. And the truth is, I don't give a damn who the next leader of the Conservative Party is. I really don't. The point about them, it doesn't matter who leads them, the brand is bust. The brand is broken. People will not go back to them. They've let us down so badly. And as for Labour, I mean, goodness me. Have you ever known a new Prime Minister get off to a worse start than Keir Starmer? It's truly shocking. I mean, the message of things can only get worse is hardly inspiring, is it? And now we're living in a state, and you all know it, but they'll deny it in Westminster until the cows come home. We're living in a state with two-tier policing. We're living in a state with two-tier justice. We're living in a state that is led by two-tier care, and we've had enough already. One in four of those that voted Labour in the general election on July the 4th, 1 in 4 already say they are considering, they are inclined to vote for Reform UK. Already. We do not need to change the mind of a single person living in this country, because the silent majority is already with us on the key issues that we care about. We can win the next general election just with the numbers of people that agree with our principles, that agree that family, that agree that community, that agree that country should be the things that absolutely that everybody in British public life campaigns for, because they are the most important things to all of us that live here. No. What we have to do is to be credible. What we have to do is to be on the ground everywhere. What we have to do is to show that we can bring success after success after success. If we do those things, we genuinely can. I never thought I'd say this, but I genuinely believe we can change the future of politics. We can change the future of our country. We can perhaps get back a little bit of pride in what it is to be British, what it is to respect our history, what it is to stand up for our values, what it is to understand the Judeo-Christian culture underpins everything we are, everything we've ever stood for, everything we believe. To end this madness that is going through corporate life, that is going through, in fact, most of the public sector. Which reminds me, there's a lady called Dame Alison Rose. Now, she was the head of NatWest Bank, but saw fit for her organisation not just to debank me, but to leak confidential information about me to her mates at the BBC. Well, of course, she was fired, and I was delighted, but she's now got a big new highly paid job. Isn't that good? She's gone to Mishcon to Raya, and she's in charge of equality, diversity, and inclusion. So given her track record, we wish Mishcon to Raya the very, very best of luck. But we believe in meritocracy. We believe that a society looks after its weak, but encourages everybody else to do the very best it can. And we don't care in this party. We don't care about skin colour. We don't care about orientation. We couldn't care less who you are. We care whether you share the values of this country. We care whether you obey the law. And we'll judge you on who you are. We'll judge you on who you are as a person. Isn't this what everybody wants? Is that what we're going to fight for? Can we succeed? Can we make history? Are you going to be part of it? Thank you very, very much indeed.